Good evening. My name is Kay Lorentz. I work for an organization called Resilient Kids. We are officially 11 years old this year. And my topic tonight, the heading of my talk is I Can, which comes out of, if you know anything about the building blocks to resilience, children having to know who they are, that they have safe spaces so that they can do great things. So my talk is going to go around why safe spaces are so important in the work we do and what that looks like. So, let me go back. Can I take it back? So when I first went, I think it was the first time Outliers did this, speak, that I spoke about safe spaces for children. And in the picture you see behind me was my original 10 slides. Now, I'm not going to explain the original 10 that I did, but back then, my thinking had everything to do with if we just joined together as networks, if we just joined together as organizations, as Christians, as churches, as people in South Africa, and raised our voice, the government would do more to help us. My own learning that year was, you need to be listening to people who are willing to hear you. So I felt quite exhausted at the end of that year. And we know we worked together, right? We did a lot of things that year, raising our voices louder, visiting Parliament, doing a lot of things just to get people to engage that we needed to be doing more around the gaps we see in children and education in our city. So I had a lot of reframing in my thinking after that year. And a lot of it had to do with, go back again, where am I? Sorry. The head-heart connection. Every child needs to know that they're loved, and every child needs to know they belong. So the more and more research that comes out says that every child is wired to know they're loved and that they belong. And if they don't know they're loved and they don't know they belong, they're not going to learn. So my thinking went from let's change the government, let's change our big spaces, to let's look at the individual child in our small spaces we create for them and what we can do for them that would make them know in this place, I'm loved and I belong here. And what would that look like? And so for myself, I did a lot of thinking of how would we even create that space? What would that look like? Because if two parents, made love and had a baby and took it seriously enough to raise their child safely, the child would grow up to be an adult who could do great things. But in a lot of circumstances, and in our country where it's debated all the time, but we know statistically that 50% of fathers are maybe not around for their children. And even if they are around, they're not even involved with their children. So even the understanding of what's safe and what a child needs to grow to be resilient is under great debate. But the reality is a child needs adults who care about them. A child needs adults who think that they're worth building up, they're worth keeping safe. That everything about that child needs to be protected. But we see it, and I don't have to make a case in this space, that that's not happening for a lot of the children in our city, in our country, and in the world. So this whole debate on what does safety look like. In the work we do, we work with adults in Resilient Kids, training them in psychosocial support to help children find resilience. The I am great, I have family, I have friends, I have people who care about me, and I can do great things. To realize the blockage to that was finding adults who can actually give that to the children. Because as you start working with people who are responsible for the children in our country, which we've had the great privilege of doing as we've traveled with Resilient Kids, working with people who are responsible for this, find out that so many adults' blockage is their own pain. So many blockages to adults being able to care for children in our community is the fact that they've got their own trauma and their own pain that hasn't been looked at. And that gets in the way of us being able to make safe spaces for children. This was very frustrating for me, right? Because I started this organization thinking, we're going to make everything better for the children. We bring adults into the space, we give them a whole lot of psychosocial supports, we help them with a whole lot of psychosocial skills, and by the end of the week, we've got a whole lot of adults who need counseling because no one ever listened to their pain. No one looked at their trauma. And that's what we face as a nation. That there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of trauma. We haven't had enough conversation. We haven't had enough healing processes to hold each other's pain. So we need to go on a journey, right? I had to go on a journey. I had to go on a journey on my own stuff, my own white privilege, my own pain, my own irritation with the fact that in 22 years we haven't been able to have the conversations that change education, that things haven't really shifted. That when I was in matric, we were busy shouting, let black people into our schools, and my daughter's in matric, and the same fights are going on 22 years later. That these things haven't really been addressed is very shocking for somebody like me who put my hand up and said, I buy into the Rainbow Nation. I believe this journey. I want it. And to still be called a racist broke my heart and breaks my heart. But the reality is, if I'm not going to show up and listen and care and want to make it right and create safe spaces where people can tell their stories, be heard, held, and say sorry in a way that isn't just with my mouth, but in my resources that I give, then we can start making this thing right. This safety has got everything to do with me holding your hand and you holding my hand and us saying together we can do this thing. But it means we actually have to talk. It means we actually have to sit in spaces cross-culturally and say we can do this. But then we have to be prepared to, and this is where my prop comes in and I'm running out of time. We can pretend we see everything clearly, right? But where governments have made policies that abuse us, where parents didn't love us like they were supposed to, where education and money isn't being put where it's meant to go, where churches aren't prepared to speak about things that really need to be spoken about. There are churches that are, but a lot of them don't. We still don't talk about it. We cannot pretend to see each other if we're not prepared to look at the stuff. We cannot pretend that things are okay when they're really not okay. My hula hoop. For every child, for every human being in South Africa to be able to say, I am worth loving, I am loved, I am heard, I am seen, I have a family, I have people who care about me, I can do something, means it's we, as the adults in these communities, need to be putting these things in place. These safe spaces where children know when I come here, I am seen, I am heard, I am loved. I have people like Laura and I have people like Heidi who are prepared to teach me physics but know my name. People who care about what I feel, people who care about what I think. And when I've given that, I know I can change my own future. And that's the conversation I feel we need to have. If we're going to be safe, we're going to make safety, we're going to have to look at the pain. We're going to have to look at these conversations, we're going to have to look at the stuff that's still keeping us apart and not pretend it's made right just by legislation. Legislation is not enough. Real conversations, real building bridges, which I give to the people later who can tell you how to do that, not me. But I'm just making a case for why this is such an important conversation, why we need to be having it, why we need to not be afraid of pain, why as people we need to sit and say, can I hear your story? And not try to fix it, but just be there with you. and trust that as we listen, we will heal. To trust as we listen, we will find as a nation the things we need to be able to rebuild together. Not because I think I know what you need, not because you think you know what I need, but together we find the solutions. So, I hope that makes a case to open up tonight for you, that we can create safe spaces. And to build them, it's just got everything to do with basic compassion for one another as a nation. Thank you.